Welcome to Stacks and Stats. I'm your boy Sangeeth, and today is a truly incredible day. Today we had silver hit $60 USD per ounce. Now, this to me was something that I did not think that we would see by 2025. In fact, I thought that we would probably see this by 2026. Now, as a stacker, I'm super happy to have silver hit $60, but I'm also frustrated because along the ways, silver hit its obvious road bumps with just the sheer manipulation. Like, we all saw it and it was so evident. And I think that the people or the powers that be that are trying to manipulate silver are getting more and more desperate. And we saw that on full show over the past few months. And I just kind of want to talk about how frustrating it is to be a silver stacker. Now, I actually am a fairly new silver stacker, so I can appreciate the guys and the gals that have been in this for much longer than I have. And I mean, it can get a bit defeating. The sheer manipulation in the market is a piss off, and it's so blatant and it's so out there. And yet like every silver stacker knows that it's there, but it almost seems as if not enough is done about it. I was looking into JP Morgan Chase. So JP Morgan, honestly, one of the biggest banks ever, one of the biggest companies ever. And I was looking into their silver spoofing. Essentially, they were fined almost $1 billion. And that was because they were manipulating the precious metals market. And just the sheer audacity of how they did this kind of upset me. They were able to get away with this for the better part of a decade. And it pretty much involved them spoofing the prices of precious metals and reaping the profits for themselves. And honestly, quite frankly, it's disgusting. I understand that there's a certain level of manipulation that happens in all markets, but specifically with JP Morgan, just given the size and how big they are, I mean, if the biggest of the biggest fish are doing this, you know everybody else is, at least to some extent. Now, a lot of people, I just want to break down as to what happened when JP Morgan was spoofing the silver market. Now, JP Morgan, essentially what they were doing was they were artificially increasing the prices of precious metals and selling them at the same time, if that makes any sense. It's kind of like, what they would do is they would put in these fake buy orders, buy, let's buy gold, platinum, silver, what have you. And that would essentially push the prices, the bid prices of these metals up. And unsuspecting traders like you and I would think, oh, gee, the price of these metals are going up, you know, based off of whatever calculations or technical analysis that was done at the time. And they would essentially buy those metals only to find out that there were no buyers because it was JP Morgan that was the buyer. And what they would do is they would essentially just back off their trades. They would put in these buy orders that they never wanted to fulfill. And it was just meant to pump the price higher so the retail market or other traders just like you and I would essentially buy them. And long story short, it got them a higher price for metals that they were selling. It's kind of like if you owned an auction, if you were running an auction, and say, for example, you were trying to sell a famous painting or any painting for that matter, and you had your buddies in the audience and they were just bidding the price, $50. $50 going $55, and your other buddy was like $60 and $70 and $80. And long story short, like, it just kind of got to a point where like any unsuspecting person, any attendant at that auction would just walk in and be like, wow, this painting of literally, it could be a dog smoking a cigar or something, it must be worth $150. And they would put their bid in, and your buddies would be laughing. They'd be grinning ear to ear because they knew they did not have the money. They were just there as placeholders to put in artificial bids to bid the price ups for some unsuspecting person to come in and buy it. So JP Morgan was essentially caught doing this for years, for almost 8 years. And that is pretty upsetting considering that they got away with it for as long as they did. And also the fact that they were only issued a 920-ish $1 million fund. And I know that sounds like a lot. In the grand scheme of things, it's literally nothing. JP Morgan is one of the biggest companies in the entire world. Like I said, their assets are almost at $5 trillion. So, I mean, even if you round up to that 920 million, we'll call it $1 billion fine. And people have said, oh, this is the biggest ever fine ever given out to anybody in all of spoofing history. I mean, it's a drop in the bucket for these guys. Like JP Morgan, I mean, when you're talking, you own almost 5 trillion in assets, and then you get handed a $1 billion fine. That's roughly equivalent to you having $5,000 in cash and you being asked to pay $1 to $1.10 in a fine. So you can see how that, I mean, it may sound big on paper, but really in the grand scheme of things, it's absolutely nothing. But it goes to show you the amount of manipulation that actually happens in this market. Now, with that being said, I'm not naive. I understand manipulation has always been a thing in the precious metals markets. And I know to some extent there's some level of manipulation in all markets. But I am just so pissed off at the gross manipulation that there is specifically in the precious metals markets. And it's so obvious too. They don't even try to hide it anymore. And being a new stacker, like I can only feel and empathize with what it would have been like to be a silver stacker, you know, for all you veterans out there that have been stacking for, 10, 15, 20 plus years. Like, man, it must have been frustrating. And it just upsets me being a fairly new stacker. I've only been stacking for 3 years. 3 years, and I'm already kind of pissed off at how everything's been going. And I'm glad to see that finally we're seeing some price discovery. Finally, we're seeing a little bit of light at the end of this tunnel. And this actually leads me into my next topic, because I wanted to talk about the obvious fake cooling issue that happened at the data center for the CME, the Chicago Mercantile Exchange. Now, I mean, this was so obvious that I was just so taken back at how brazen they were to call it a cooling issue, because personally, I mean, it's like a running joke now that what were they really cooling? Were they cooling the data centers or were they cooling the price? Long story short, there was a data center that had a cooling issue right when the price of silver was about to break its all-time high. And there are some theories behind this. Apparently there's some rumors that there was some huge player in China that demanded physical delivery, which they couldn't fulfill, and they had to find some reason to, I guess, stop it, or to, I have no idea what the reasons were. The point is that this happened, and it was for a data center, and their excuse was that it was a cooling issue. But what the crazy thing is, this is one of the busiest data centers in the world. So not only do they have a backup, but they also have a backup to the backup. And I'm no data center expert, but they have a backup to the backup to the backup, and it's called a failover. So essentially what happens is, if something happens, and mind you, it's rare that these things happen in the wintertime in Illinois, which is fairly north, and where I'm recording from, Canada, I'm just about 7 hours north of there, and we're in the middle of a snowstorm right now. So I don't think they could crack a window open or something, but the point is, it just seems kind of odd that there would be a cooling issue in all places, especially like Illinois in November. I find that kind of strange. But anyways, they have a backup that failed. Then their backup to that backup had failed. And then there's something called a failover. Essentially what that is these data centers are all interconnected. They're not standalone systems. And what happened was the failover, which pretty much means if something fails, then that specific load would be transferred to, it's like load distribution. It gets transferred to the next available data center, which is already wired to take on that load. And this is all technology from like the late 90s. And the fact that they're trying to say that all of that failed at the same time is just wild. And it goes to show you, like, I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I'm not here to say, was 9/11 an inside job? Did they land on the moon? Whatever. There are arguments to be made on both sides. But this is like as blatant as this is blatant as blatant gets. And it's come to a point where it actually pisses me off a little bit, because they're not, like, they're peeing on us and they don't even have the decency to call it rain. And they're almost rubbing it in our face. Oh, out of all the issues that it could have been, it was a cooling issue. And that, I find, just doesn't sit very well with me. With silver hitting $60 USD an ounce, to me, this is such an achievement, because, like, forever, I understand that people were afraid. The veteran stackers out there, you guys know who you are. I understood the massive sell-off when silver hit 50, because it happened in 1980, it happened in 2011, and, you know, it's very understandable for people to expect that was to happen this year. And the fact that we have just blown right past 60, that tells me that the absolute lowest floor that we could see is probably at 50. And now that we're at 60, in fact, when I checked the futures, we're actually trading at 61. And this, to me, is a good day, because it shows me that the big powers that be, they tried their best they gave us their all. They essentially brought out the big guns to try to suppress this market. And it makes me happy that they failed. It makes me happy that soon silver will see price discovery, and the market will determine what silver should actually be. Now, with that being said, I do expect a pullback in silver. I am optimistic in silver overall. And I think I'm expecting a bit of a pullback, just because the price has risen dramatically since early November. And because we're also heading into the holidays and there's a lot of demand, I think that the price, it is somewhat seasonal. But even considering the price pullback, I still think silver is going to continue to trend upwards and see price discovery into 2026. This was kind of a random impromptu video. I just do want to apologize for my rant about my frustrations with market manipulation and being a silver stacker. I just want to thank you guys for watching this video. And if you don't mind, please like and subscribe, and have a Merry Christmas.